So this week, Sargon of Akkad, also known as Carl Benjamin, posted a petition to change.org. The petition was broadly concerning the subject of social justice in American college campuses, but more deeply than that, it really talked about the importation of activism into academic disciplines, and in particular into academic disciplines that concern social science. Now, immediately, this petition has done quite well. It's garnered about 20,000 signatures. And I have to say, it is entirely needed, and I immediately put my name to it, even though there were some flaws in how I think Sargon laid out the argument. So I'm going to take this opportunity to read through the petition, explain what I think the good and bad points are, and really lay out why something like this, some activism in this dimension, is so needed. The petition reads, Suspend social justice courses. Social justice has become scientifically illiterate, logically unsound, deeply bigoted, and openly supremacist. Social justice professors are indoctrinating young people into a pseudoscientific cult behind closed doors that is doing damage to their health, education, and future. Social justice has become a victim of its own good intentions, and in the desperate attempt to make the world better for some, it is creating a world that is better for none. It has become another ideology fit only to pave the road to hell, so that it is time to turn around and choose another path that is concerned with reason, science, and improving the lives of every human. To clarify, we are calling for the teaching of social justice courses in universities to be temporarily suspended. What follows is up for debate, but as it stands now, social justice is causing far more harm than good, and must be halted and reassessed. Now I'm going to start going over some of the problems with this petition. And I think the first one is what a lot of people picked up, especially some of the critics who are a little bit more well ensconced into how the academia actually works. And that is, it's really vague what Sargon calls social justice. I know this was a terminology that we typically used to apply to the activist left, but social justice is not really a concept that you can track through any given university very easily at all. So if I were an administrator reading this petition, I wouldn't necessarily know where to begin or even which departments social justice referred to. There very seldomly is a social justice department, even though many of these social science departments, which I think what Sargon's actually targeting, do oftentimes use the word social justice. So that's one practical problem. Another practical problem is it's not really clear how a university would suspend or what incentive they would have to suspend any kind of social justice or social science program. The petition doesn't really have any teeth to it. And that's also a problem. And in some sense, these two issues are how these problems perpetuate themselves. If there was a department of social justice that was explicitly making the mistake of trying to inject activism into social science, then that would be a very easy problem to confront. The real difficulty is that these issues of activism being used in place of actual social science, actual facts, is that these presuppositions are sort of folded into the culture and into the presuppositions that underlie a lot of these courses. So you're not going to have a very easy time as an administrator of, say, Harvard or University of Michigan to look at a petition like this and even know what someone who signed it is really asking for. And I think a lot of critics who confronted Sargon on this brought up this issue fairly well, so I won't repeat it. All right, so let's get to the brass tacks. With all of these practical problems, the labels, the fact that it's not exactly clear what we could do about this, why did I sign this petition? I signed this petition because this is one of the largest problems with the present academy, and it's filtering down into all areas of our society. Now, this might be a personal peeve of mine. I am also in education, but I went to school about 10 years ago, and while I was there, I saw some of this stuff. I saw the activist left, just as it was going from being sort of the presumptive majority opinion in these social sciences to being uncontestedly a uniform feature of these social sciences. And of course, I took the diversity requirements. I took the requirements for liberal arts, where they bring you into the room and tell you about your white privilege and tell you about the systems of oppression. And when I took these classes, there are similar things in the 80s, but this focused ideological perspective was fairly new. And I hated it. I rejected it immediately. I saw that it was BS. But back then, I was convinced. I was convinced that this was the high watermark of this particular kind of BS. That once you got into the real world, once these students went through this, heteronormativity, white privilege, trigger warning, systems of oppression, once they got through this curriculum and got into the real world, this would be a self-correcting problem. They would see the errors of their ways, and then subsequently, this would be a self-correcting problem in academia. It would kind of, the pendulum, as they say, would shift back into the right direction, and there would be a moderate correction. But in the last 10 years, none of this has happened. It's all gotten worse. So much worse. It's now everywhere. And everywhere I look, the same people who are educated with this stuff are repeating the same absolutely false, absolutely BS ideological points back at me. They're injecting it into the corporate culture. They're injecting it to the government. There's no end to this. It didn't get better. And now I feel like I have to kick myself because I feel like I should have confronted it more back then. I shouldn't have told myself and other people, hey, let's just ignore these educators. They're benign. They're in stupid disciplines. I'm an engineer. Why should I care? It matters. It has mattered for the entire country, indisputably at this point. And look, I know that you have to raise students with some ideology. I'm a Catholic. I understand that ideology is, in some sense, a core feature of a human education. But leaving aside the fact that I find these radical philosophies that they are using for ideology to be completely false and immoral, the universities were never tasked with ideologically indoctrinating the youth of this country. They were tasked with educating people on facts, marketable skills, and cultural background, not trying to form them into activists for some kind of political end, which is obviously what's going on in American classrooms right now. And I think that the greater society, I think parents, I think the people who are funding these colleges need to be aware that this is going on. And, I know there's plausible deniability. Where is it going on, right? Because we don't actually do polls and see what these courses are teaching, but it's going on. I've been a student for 5 years. I've been a grad student for far longer than that. And it is obvious that it is going on. There's no denying it. And this needs to be part of a conversation. And, it might be even one thing that this ideology was accompanied with some knowledge of the outside world and the culture they inhabit. But for the most part, what I'm seeing coming out of the liberal arts, and especially the social sciences, is people who don't know anything about history, about how to do statistics, about how to think critically. All they have is some preconditioned format about the right side of history and the issues they need to have the correct opinions on. It is bizarre. I mean, let's just take some examples that I've personally seen. I've seen history majors who can tell me everything about Edward Said's sort of leftist theory of Orientalism and how the West has oppressed the Middle East. They can tell me everything about that theory, but they don't know what the frickin' Ottoman Empire is. I have known students who have had degrees in comparative literature who have no knowledge of Dante's Divine Comedy. But they have knowledge of how there are systems of oppression built into literature. This is nuts. What are these people learning? I shouldn't say that. I know what these people are learning. They're learning how to be activists, which is the only thing that these contemporary departments in social sciences really understand as being valuable. And what's so ironic, they're not even really developing very robust or intellectual activists. Because these kids don't know anything. They don't even know or understand the systems that they're critiquing from these weird Marxist perspectives. They don't have the knowledge to do that. They don't have the knowledge to debate. They don't have the willingness to debate. None of these kids coming out of college want to have a discussion. They just want to get patted on the heads for whatever opinion they think is the one that is on the right side of history. This is education malpractice at the highest order. And I feel like I've witnessed this from the beginning to when it's now finally metastasized. I've seen it at every stage, and it needs to be stopped. This needs to be an issue because it's not going to get any better. It's not. I've already been through this. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. These kids who go through the system are going to perpetuate the same ideas, and it's going to go through an even more radical phase where they train people who even have less knowledge and less understanding of other people's opinions and how their ideology fits into other people's. And I think this is why something like Sargon's petition to have social justice suspended is important. I mean, it's obvious. Carl Benjamin, Sargon's name, he doesn't really understand how education works. He's not an academician. He doesn't have the knowledge even that I have about this. But the conversation needs to occur. There needs to be a political movement to put this nonsense to an end, to actually have some standards. And I know it's not going to solve all the problems. Even if we got rid of this weird activism stuff, these fake numbers, this pre-packaged group of factoids that aren't even really facts that are used to bolster the activist parts of the organization in academia. Even if we got rid of that, we still wouldn't bring back knowledge of history. We wouldn't bring back knowledge of Western culture that I think is so valuable. But at least it would be a start. At least it would be some way to push back on these people. They have done one of the greatest crimes imaginable. They have essentially created a generation that will never care about these questions of history and culture. They've created a fundamentally uncurious generation that cannot think properly, and they need to be stopped. And if this is a way to do it, then I will throw all of my very, very small channels energy to promote this cause. So, thank you for listening, and have a wonderful night.